There are lots of use cases. There are interesting use cases, but none of the use cases are practical without having human in the loop.
Welcome to Embracing Digital Transformation, where we investigate effective change leveraging people, process, and technology. This is Darren Pulsford, Chief Solution Architect, author, and most importantly, your host. On today's episode, GenAI Reality Check, staying informed amid the hype, with special guest Manish Tandoor, CEO and Managing Director of Sensar Technology. Manish, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Darren. Thank you for having me.
Hey, Manish, you're the CEO and Managing Director of Sensar Technology. But before we get into that, and we had a lively discussion when we first met, but before we get there, people want to know who is Manish, where does he come from, why is he talking to Darren today? So let's hear your background story.
All right. I stumbled through life. Born in India, in a fairly middle class family, not very educated uh, uh, family, but they were smart enough to invest in their kids' education, and I was a beneficiary of that. So, 1985, I managed to get through one of those top engineering schools in India called Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur. A lot of the Silicon Valley greats and founders are from that college. Obviously, I am much below average as compared to them, but 4 years of engineering, worked for a couple of years in technology, software for a Citibank subsidiary in India. Uh, did my MBA from Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, which is again one of the better known um, um, better known colleges. Worked for about 20 years in a small company called Infosys Technologies. Uh, when I joined, it was less than 1,000 people, and when I left, it was about 200,000 people, and I
That's
was running
that's,
about.
that's a lot of growth there. You saw a lot then. So were
Yeah,
you with Infosys through the whole .com boom and bust, or
yeah,
did that come after?
96 to 2016.
Wow, you saw
Yeah,
it all then.
yeah, 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 yeah. And if I take off my shirt, you'll see enough scars on the back
Oh
also.
yeah, yeah, I'm sure you will. So that brings up an interesting point. How did you get from that to where you are today? Because
Yeah, no, I think primarily I got through because I had spent 20 years in a great company, had seen really a startup evolving into this mature behemoth. And somewhere I also wanted to um, run something on my own, so to say. Frankly, I didn't have the risk taking ability to do a startup. So I did the next best thing, and I joined as a CEO of a private equity led company. uh, Turned it around, sold it off in a 4 year time frame. Then sort of did some consulting and advisory stuff for private equity for about a year. And then this opportunity came in. It's an opportunity to lead a publicly listed company in the technology space. So that's something that I had not done before. So I said, "Hey, good experience. Let's see
yeah,
what we
a
can do."
publicly traded company is a different beast, isn't it?
Uh, I know if I had known that it better, I would have asked at least 5 times what I'm getting today.
Yeah.
Public company CEO, anyone can throw stones at the
Oh
poor
yeah,
guy.
yeah.
so, so yes.
Oh, that is hilarious. All right, so when we talked a little bit, we talked about this whole AI buzz. generative AI and everything that's around that, to me, it smells a lot like the dot com boom of the 90s. And you lived through it, I lived through it, but this new generation, they have no idea what it was like pre internet. They have no idea what that was like. So, are you feeling the same thing around this, or is this just like blockchain? It's going to come and go very quickly, maybe come back in a different way. What are your thoughts on that?
Uh, One is the hype is over the top. The hype
Oh,
is
yeah.
over, right? And while the uh, technology is there, if you look at the underpinnings of the technology, it is really brute force mathematics. What one used to do in two dimensions, which what we used to call curve fitting, you try and do the same thing at a massive scale of 2 million by 2 million parameters. And that is what really generative AI is. Artificial general intelligence is way off, according to me. Use cases, there are lots of use cases, there are interesting use cases, but none of the use cases are practical without having human in the loop.
I totally agree with you there. If I only see I see the generative AI stuff as helping me be more productive as a human, not
Yes.
replacing me. So
Yeah.
I love it when and I've read the clickbait out there. Software engineers, we don't need them anymore. We got Gen AI. I said, you guys are crazy if you're going to trust what's coming out of a Gen AI or any AI to do software engineering. Now, maybe writing a little bit of code that I can now check, absolutely.
Yeah.
But you still need an expert.
Yeah. Would you just ask people, would you send a space shuttle which is being run purely on generative AI written code?
No,
No.
I saw Space Odyssey 2000. I don't want hell taken over. But no,
So,
I absolutely would not. I mean, I don't
uh,
even trust it to write code for me to post on social media,
yeah,
because it's wrong. It's not 100% correct.
yeah,
Um, but it gives me ideas. That's what I like. It says, "Oh, I didn't know what that API was, or I didn't know that approach. Oh, that's an interesting approach. I can probably use it."
yeah. I
That's
mean,
how I
one of the interesting things that I read somewhere, which stuck to my mind, was generative AI is a stochastic parrot, and
I like that.
I really loved it because it can learn pretty much anything that you want, and it can give you a statistically correct answer based on probabilities. Now, an answer based on probabilities is still based on probabilities only, and probability cannot be one, right?
It can't. It says it's creative, but it gives you in. It can crunch a bunch of information. That's it,
Yeah.
right? And it will spit out something that it thinks you might like, but ultimately you need a human in the loop to make decisions.
So, Darren, I'll tell you something very interesting. I attended a conference. I came back from London, attending a CEO conference there, and one of the topics there was risks from generative AI. And
Interesting.
people kept talking about loss of jobs and legal issues and the standard stuff. And at the end of it, I was in the audience. I raised my hand and said, I think the biggest risk with generative AI is that it may not prove to be what it is hyped to be. It's because here there's a bunch of CEOs, there was like 50, 70 CEOs in a room talking about risks and the bigger and spending time, money, effort, and it's at the end of it, it doesn't turn out to be anything. And there are so many. You talked about blockchain. I can give you RPA. RPA was supposed to
Oh yeah,
replace.
RPA. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I would say that having been through so many cycles, the technology is promising, but it is overhyped, and it's still incipient. It is still very, very brute force. The real algorithms are still not there. I mean,
So
transformer alg- transformer algorithm is just a way of parallelism and computing it faster. There's nothing very fundamental about it, in my opinion.
so if I'm a CEO or a CIO or a CTO, what do I do? I can't just stick my head in the sand around this because the potential for competitive advantage is there,
Yeah.
right? I can move faster. It makes me more productive as an individual. Um, can I leverage it in any way organizationally? And if I don't do anything about it, do I fall too far behind? That's the question, right? That people are having.
So I would, and I was asked this question in the same conference, and I said, what people talk about as hallucination and all this stuff is basically error rates. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, you're
Every,
right.
every AI model has an error rate. And if I was the government, I would ask them to publish each AI model to actually publish a goddamn
Oh,
error
they'll
rate.
never do that. Are you
Yeah, I
kidding
know
me, Manish? They will
that.
never do that.
I, I know that. And I said, look, first of all, you should apply it to the use cases where the error rate of the model is acceptable to you.
I
Okay,
like
like
that.
acceptable to the use case. So, I mean, if on a particular thing, it has an error rate of 3%, and I mean, for example, healthcare, an error rate of 3% is unacceptable. Any
Correct.
healthcare, anything over 0.001% is unacceptable, right? So don't apply it to those use cases. Use cases, apply them only where the error rate is acceptable. Second is, always do it with human in the loop. And with the state of the technology that it is today in, you should give use cases where it amplifies human potential rather than replaces human.
I I really like that. It amplifies human potential because there's a lot of things that I already use Gen AI for that saves me hours and hours of my time, especially around repetitive tasks that I need to get done. They need a little bit of cognitive, right? A little bit of creativity, or it's fuzzy. I can't just RPA them all because things don't quite match every single time. So I found generative AI to help me dramatically, but I also found I can't completely trust it. And I like how you said if the error rate is fine, then I'm okay. A great example on this podcast, we're going to have an AI transcribe this podcast, and my kids will say, "Dad, it's horrible. It misspells things, and it thinks that Gen AI is named Jenny. That's how it prints it out." And I said, "I don't have the time to go back and correct the 3% that it's wrong, and everyone else on the internet already knows it's Gen AI created, and they don't care. They're okay with it, so it's
Yeah,
acceptable."
uh,
So I see exactly where you're coming from with that.
yeah. And I have told at least my clients that they should be very cautious in using it with their customers in an unsupervised manner, right? I mean, look, it's if it is intelligent, if it's supposed to learn things, then it can learn the wrong things also.
Oh, yes, it can.
Right?
We have already seen that in
Yes,
several
yes,
cases.
yes, yes. So I would be very cautious before using it in an unsupervised fashion in front of my. So don't think of replacing a human agent with generative AI for a conversation with your. You can use generative AI to amplify the capability of the agent, right? But don't use it to directly interface because you never know what will come out of it. And the last thing you want is a customer that your generative AI or whatever chatbot has abused. So uh,
Yeah, they might
that's
suggest you
why.
to go to another vendor, one of your
Yeah, yeah,
competitors.
yeah. And the customer might ask, okay, so who's your biggest competitor and what is their address? A generative AI chatbot might answer that, right?
Yeah,
Hey,
will.
hey, or hey, why are you asking me for this quote? My premium is 15% higher than my competitor. so, that's what I feel that people need to be very very cautious
So,
about it.
but this reminds me of the dot com boom, right? Because I raised money for a startup in '98, and it was not a web dot com company. It was an integrated development environment, and I couldn't get any money because I didn't have a web presence. And I said, it's not a web presence tool. It's to help you write code better. But I couldn't, the hype wasn't there. So I couldn't get any money. And this is a fear that I have that's going on right now is the foundational tools. Now, luckily, I sold that company to IBM, which turned it into an IDE that everyone knows as Galaxy,
Mhm.
which is pretty Eclipse. I mean Eclipse,
Eclipse, yeah.
which was very cool, and that whole integrated IDE concept. What's interesting is I don't see people investing money in making the foundational parts of AI, in, more trustworthy, more reliable, more secure. I see everyone going after the dogfood.coms of the 90s in the AI space, right? All the glitz and glamour. Are we going to see a bust like we did in the 90s with the dot com boom and then bust?
I mean, hopefully people have learned their lessons
I
from.
think it's been too long. It's been over 20 years.
I mean, I would say, Darren, that there are high risk ways of approaching generative AI, and there are low risk ways of, you know.
Okay, so what are the low risk ones? Let's talk about where I can use it.
All right. So one of the lowest risk way that I can think of is to answer the question: is my data ready for generative AI? Right. So what you're trying to do is to first create the plumbing, because AI without data is
It's
useless. Yeah.
useless. Yep, I
Yeah.
agree.
So as an enterprise, if you can create that plumbing of data, okay, which can be useful to whatever tool evolves in the future. Now, that I would consider as a low risk way of doing it. Because, hey, look, it may not be generative AI, it may be some other technology, or
Right.
it may be just, statistical modeling or whatever, the good old
Yeah,
stuff,
there's lots
right?
of data analytics models out
Yeah,
there.
analytics,
GenAI
yeah,
is just one of several.
several. So, why don't you think of first digitizing those aspects of your business, putting them into these vector databases and all that stuff, so that as this thing matures, you can use that data more effectively and get the competitive advantage from your business. Because guess what,
Gotcha.
a generic tool will not give you the competitive advantage, because a generic tool will be available to everyone. It is how you can make that tool more competitive and more advantageous for you compared to others, that will give you the competitive advantage. And I believe that without the underpinnings of data, the the technology is pretty much useless, right?
So
So
do
that's
you
a low risk way of approaching the problem.
No, I like that a lot. Do you see, because there was a big hype about 3 years ago around, maybe it was four now, around the data gold rush. Data's the new oil. And Gen AI came in and, yeah, now that's been, if you look at all the news articles, everything's Gen AI, everything's AI, and the data management stuff is just plummeted in the news cycles. But what I'm hearing from you is that's the secret. That's the secret.
Of course, you're. I mean, if you take that analogy of a stochastic parrot, then any model is as good or as bad as
As
the
the data.
underpinning data,
Yeah.
right? So I would say that is, and data. I'm not just talking about objective data. I'm talking about the written word, pictures,
Yeah,
graphics,
unstructured.
everything, unstructured data, everything, right? So that is what I feel is the path to take.
I happen to agree with you 100% on that. And I think what Gen AI maybe and AI today has done is put a magnifying glass, but it's obscured magnifying glass right now on on data, because I think that's the next big movement is people using Gen AI with their own data through like a RAG, to now provide real competitive advantage, real efficiency in the way that we do our work. I think that's right, sitting right there waiting.
Mhm.
So, all right. So how do I get started? How do I get started with that? Do I have to hire your company to help me figure that out? Um,
I would love it if they do it. And frankly, like any technology, don't think of the use cases from a technology perspective. Think of the use cases from a business perspective. What will give you most? The problem is that the boards ask CIOs or CTOs to do use cases on generative AI. Okay, and they can think of primarily technological use cases. So the two use cases that I have heard the most is I had a 10,000 page manual. I fed it into this. It was able to answer questions. Number one. Number two, I had 80 agents. They were taking 15 minutes per call. Now they are taking 11 minutes per call. Okay. These are the two primary use cases that I have heard. The technology is an enabler. People who will win are the people who have the right ideas of how it can apply to their business to give them a competitive advantage. And I think business needs to get directly involved in some of those decision makings. Initially, don't think of it as a disruptive technology. Think of it as something which is more productivity related. And then eventually, at some point, if the technology matures, it might really
it
become a
might really
disruptive.
be disruptive later.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you see these tools, early adopters of Gen AI, in even those two simple use cases? Another one that someone mentioned to me was sales and customer management, tailoring emails and responses and things like that, where now a small company that maybe has 10 salespeople can compete with a big company with 1,000 salespeople, because they can handle so much more if they're first movers. Do you see that capability coming in, or because I'm not really replacing, I'm making an individual more, I'm scaling an individual's capabilities. That
Yeah, but
makes sense.
again, the question to the, I mean, unfortunately, that scaling the ability works more in negative use cases for hacking, for phishing, for
Yeah,
right. And as Warren, I mean, I someone gave me that incident that someone used generative AI to simulate a complete boardroom along with the CEO and two or three of his lieutenants, and made the controller or whoever treasury guy wire $20 million of money.
that's
Have you heard
crazy.
of that? Right?
I have not heard of that one. I've heard of
No.
some other
Yes.
deep fakes, but so this guy actually,
Yeah.
because as a human, I would say, well, I'm going to check. You want $20 million? I'm going to check with two or three people, and they did that. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
And all those two or three people that he could have checked with are sitting in the same conference room in that simulation. Can you imagine that?
Hey, Manish, thanks again for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. Thank you for listening to Embracing Digital Transformation today. If you enjoyed our podcast, give it 5 stars on your favorite podcasting site or YouTube channel. You can find out more information about Embracing Digital Transformation at embracingdigital.org. Until next time, go out and embrace the digital revolution.